Welcome back to another edition of Cover One Buffalo. I'm your host today, Eric Turner. I am joined by my good friend, Mr. John Vincent. What's going on, John?
Doing good, Eric. How you been, buddy?
Good, man. It was kind of nice last weekend getting to hang out with you over at camp. So, real quick, before we get to any of the topics of the day, I mean, what'd you think at camp when we were out there last weekend?
Oh, it was great. Always a good time going out to camp. Getting a chance to see the guys up close and personal. I mean, looks like McDermott's really got the guys looking good out there. They had them in and out of their different practices and scrimmages and things like that. Nice. So it was nice to see, and everyone looked good out there. So it was real nice to see you guys all out there.
Yeah, it was a beautiful weekend, and especially on that day, we had no cover at all. It was an early morning practice, and we just roasted in those stands, wouldn't you say?
Oh, man, we were baking in those bleachers.
Sitting on those bleachers, for a couple hours, and that practice seemed a little longer than the ones, the first few days. But it was nice to sit there and chat and talk football with you. It had been a while. Obviously, we went down to the Senior Bowl, something that again I had mentioned on Twitter. I think the Senior Bowl and training camp is something that you and I and everyone at Cover One, I think it's going to be a yearly thing because I think both of those trips were really fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Senior Bowl, we had so much fun on there. I mean, the access we had and getting a chance to see those guys up close and personal and getting a feel for, who they are as people, who they are as players, getting the chance to see them against some of their peers, some of the guys at the top of their professions. And, obviously camp, like I said before, it's just nice to get out there and get a taste of football again because, these off seasons can drag out for a while.
Yeah, and I think I speak for both of us when I say that we're happy football's back. And before we get into the football talk today for this podcast, I do want to remind everyone that you can go ahead and download our app, our Cover One app. It's available for Android. It's available for iOS systems. All you do is go to those app stores and you can download it there. You'll get notifications when we decide to put out some content, whether that's audio, whether that's video, any type of content we put out. You're going to get a notification if you have that app downloaded. So definitely go ahead and download that. And then, of course, subscribe to our premium access, our premium content. We have a deal right now that's going to be running out soon at the end of preseason. For $10, you get all of our premium content for the entire year, which includes premium podcasts, premium video casts. We have our Slack channel, which is really cool, where all the premium members join in as community. They send us questions. A lot of these questions that we're going to answer later in this podcast come from our premium members. So go ahead and get to the website, cover1.net, and subscribe to our premium content because you won't be mad because it's just a great little thing that we offer to a fan. So with that said, I'm gonna rattle off some things here. Some of the things we're gonna talk about today. Some news. It's Hall of Fame weekend. We're gonna talk about some Hall of Fame players. We're gonna talk about the news of Kelvin Benjamin. There's a report that Tim Graham did today for The Athletic Buffalo, obviously a colleague of mine. And if you're not a subscriber to The Athletic, you're totally missing out on some great content because he did a Q&A with Benjamin. And you know what? It was there were some fire takes. There were some really fire takes, and we're going to talk about those here in a few minutes. And then, of course, we're going to get to a bunch of questions from our premium members in regards to several positions and players from camp and just give you our 2 cents on what's going on at camp. So with that said, let's start with the Hall of Fame because we have several guys being inducted tonight into the Hall of Fame. And so I wanted to start off with, naming off those guys. If you guys don't really pay attention to the Hall of Fame and the speeches that go on, I don't really partake unless they are Buffalo Bills. So just see random clips on Twitter just because it's an all-day event. It's honestly a whole weekend event. And so we'll talk about the players, Randy Moss, Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, Brian Dawkins, Terrell Owens, Jerry Kramer, Robert Brazil, and Bobby Beathard. So it's a loaded class this year, John. I mean, some really impressive players and guys that we kind of grew up watching. Right. And so if you had to pick one guy from this list to have on your team, who would it be?
Man, it's a tough one, but for me personally, I'm a little bit biased when it comes to linebackers. I love me a good linebacker, and Ray Lewis, man, I don't know if it gets much better than him. I mean, his intensity, his passion, his competitive nature, the way that he just breathes the game of football. Um, that's what you want in a player. I mean, he obviously is at the pinnacle of those types of things. Um, you're not going to have too many guys come around that have that kind of passion. But man, I mean, he willed himself to a lot of those, accolades he's had over the years. And I mean, couple that with his athletic ability. I mean, you got yourself again a first ballot Hall of Famer. So if I had to pick a guy out of that list, I mean, that's a hell of a list, and there's some great names on there. I'd probably go Ray Lewis.
I would have to agree with you, man. I think that's a pretty easy decision when you talk about the stuff that he brought on the field and off the field. I know he had his run-ins, but when we talk about football, when you talk about a leader, I think Ray Lewis comes to mind to a lot of people. I mean, you see the numbers and the accolades on the screen. 13-time Pro Bowler, 10-time All Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ. Super Bowl MVP. I mean, he had the production, he had the athleticism, and most of all, he had the leadership. He knew how to, like you said, will his teammates and rally his teammates to get the most out of his teammates. And so, some guys have the athleticism, but they kind of do it, quietly. They're not really outspoken. They're not really leaders. They like to lead by example. There are a lot of those guys in the league. There are not enough Ray Lewises in the league
No,
that have the athleticism, but also have the character of being able to will his teammates to get the best out of them. I don't think that there are many guys that are cut from his cloth. So
no.
I do think that he's definitely deserving, and he would be the guy I would pick, honestly, from that list as well, John.
Yeah, I mean that list is great. And like you said, a lot of those guys, us being in our mid 30s, a lot of those guys we grew up with, so we know these guys. We've seen, the majority of their careers, if not their whole careers, and an honorable mention on that list. For me personally, would be Brian Dawkins. He's
Yeah,
another guy that I think embodies some of that same attributes as Ray Lewis. Maybe not as quite as high of a level as Ray Lewis as far as the competitiveness, but man, that guy brought it day in and day out. You saw him; he was flying through the air. I mean, he's another guy that had the athleticism, had the competitive nature, had the leadership qualities. He checked all the boxes, and for another guy to for an honorable mention, and he was another guy that did it not all not just on the field, but off the field as well. You didn't hear anything about him getting any dust ups with the law or things like that. And from what I understand, he was very good in the community. So those are the type of people and the type of careers that are Hall of Famers, in my opinion.
sure,
So, if I had a vote, those are the boxes I'm checking to get guys into the Hall of Fame. Were you productive on the field? Were you competitive? Are you a leader? Did you do it right on and off the field? Because, when you're a Hall of Famer, that's the utmost respect, and I think there is more to it than just on the field per se.
sure,
Um, because sometimes the on the field production is a byproduct of maybe some of the teams you're on, or maybe the
sure.
quarterback you had, or the offensive line in front of you, things like that.
A
But
lot of variables.
there's a lot of variables. But when you piece everything together and you're still sitting there right at the top, and when you're looked at as a well within the community, then and not only that, you did well on the field, that's a Hall of Famer. So super shout outs to this whole class, but for those two guys specifically, I really think they're deserving, and good luck to them.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dawkins is that Ray Lewis of the secondary, and he
Yep.
did a lot of the same things that Ray did at the linebacker position for the secondary for the teams that he played for. And I know I read something about McDermott actually heading to the induction ceremony, I believe, because he's obviously had a lot of contact with Dawkins over the years when he was with the Eagles. And then Bob Babbage, I believe, is actually doing the speech for Brian Urlacher because he coached Urlacher all those years.
Yep.
So the Bills have a lot of ties to this. Obviously, this induction ceremony tonight. Of course, Terrell Owens being in there. So it's a nice day if you have the day off and you want to take part in that because that's a really good class. It might be one of the best, and it is being talked about as one of the best over the years. But with that said, let's transition to a little news closer to home today. And this had to do with the Bills starting wide receiver, Kelvin Benjamin. He came out today. Again, I had mentioned Tim Graham from the Athletic Buffalo did a Q&A with Benjamin, and one of the larger quotes from this piece that is really catching traction was what he said about Cam Newton, who I thought was one of his best friends. I don't know if there was some kind of falling out, but I'll read the quote to you because Tim had asked about how would he assess his career since his rookie season. And this is the exact quote from Benjamin. He says, I mean, I felt like I would have been even more successful if, I don't know, man, if I would have, looking back on it, I should have been drafted by somebody else. I should have never went to Carolina. Truly, I just think Carolina was bad for me. It was a bad fit from the get-go. If you would have put me with any other quarterback, let's be real, you know what I'm saying? Any other accurate quarterback like Rodgers or Eli Manning or Big Ben, anybody, quarterbacks with knowledge that know how to place a ball and give you a better chance to catch the ball. It just felt like I wasn't in that position. Those are some really strong words from the Bills receiver here, John. So I want to get your initial thoughts on that statement.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's a super hot take. Going back to what you said, I always thought those two were friends, and they may be friends, but I always thought that they had some sort of a connection because I know when he got traded to Buffalo, Cam Newton was pretty upset about it, and
Yeah.
by all accounts, Benjamin Calvin, he had a little bit of, he was a little shocked too that he was traded, but I guess looking at it now, maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe this was something that he wanted, obviously. And, to say though that, if I had Eli Manning or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, I mean, come on. Every receiver wants those guys as their
Yeah.
quarterbacks, right? So, I mean, I think the reason why they drafted him is it makes sense though for Carolina because obviously Cam Newton's an erratic quarterback. He doesn't have the greatest completion percentage and accuracy.
Yeah.
So, he tends to throw the ball high, and what is some of Benjamin's strengths is it's a big catch radius. So,
Yep.
For him to say it wasn't a fit, I don't know if I totally agree with that. But I mean, I could see how he would prefer to play in a system maybe that was more conducive to, I don't know, maybe just capitalizing more on his abilities instead of him having to try to make spectacular catches all over the field. But it's the NFL. You're dealt with the cards you're dealt with, and you make the best out of it, And for him to say that this year, I don't really know exactly. I'm still processing this, and trying to figure out if this is, what does this mean exactly, if it means anything. I just think really it's sour grapes. He would have liked to have obviously probably had a new contract by now, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with it, because he's playing in the final year of his contract. Nothing's, he gets hurt this year. Nothing's guaranteed next year.
Yeah.
So he has his rights to feel a little sour about how that situation played out. And obviously last year didn't play out for him in Buffalo. I'm sure like he would have liked it to. But, he's got a chance this year to amend to that, right? So, we'll see what happens this year. But, to put that on record, I don't think it was really necessary. It just makes more of I don't want to say distraction, but, when you say things like that, more questions come up, right?
Right.
So,
And they do because I mean he immediately took to Twitter. He hadn't tweeted in almost 8-9 months, and then all of a sudden he's on the defense now on his on what he said. And he said he was just basically keeping it real, just to paraphrase. But I mean, if you look at some of these numbers here, I don't really know if he really has a place to say anything bad about whether it's Cam Newton or the offense, Mike Shula, the offense coordinator, how they were using him, only using him out wide. Because it's something that as soon as Dable got a hold of him, he throws him in the slot and use him in a quasi tight end role. So that's something we're seeing at camp. But if you look at these numbers, I mean, when he was playing, he was getting looks. I mean, he's got 350 targets over the 3 years. Obviously, set out 2015 with injury, but over 3 years of play. So, I mean, he's getting his looks. His numbers aren't bad. He's going to get paid regardless, I think.
Sure.
But I agree. I think he was drafted for a certain reason to help Cam out, a guy like you said that has some accuracy issues, and he does tend to throw the ball high and have the ball sail on him. And Benjamin, and in camp this year, he's been really good. He's looked sharp. He looks leaner. He looks quicker. He looks healthy. So that's obviously a good sign going into a contract year. And I think
Mhm.
he is going to get his looks. Probably 3 or 4 a game just at high point balls. Those fades, those back shoulders, and those 50-50 balls. But
Yes.
I think he's going to get his looks. There's no way. There's no way he's not, unless he's injured because of this receiving core right now. But with that said, John, like you had mentioned, and he's playing with a quarterback that he played with a quarterback that had some accuracy issues. But these three quarterbacks that he's playing with are young. They're still, learning in the league and don't really have many starts, including Josh Allen, who's a future here. So, I mean, if you're talking about a guy, I know there's a lot of talk about signing him now so that the deal isn't, an expensive deal. So if he's going to be playing with Josh Allen for the next few years, what is the difference between Josh Allen and Cam Newton? Because if you ask me, when it comes as far as passing goes, there's not much. They're very similar as passers.
Sure. They've been, compared to each other a lot too. It's from a size standpoint, arm strength standpoint, and an accuracy standpoint. So, you might be getting somewhat of the same type of a player. Hopefully, I mean, I would be more than thrilled if Josh Allen turns out to be anywhere near as good as Cam Newton. I mean,
Right?
obviously, the last year or so hasn't been his best. Uh, for a passing standpoint. But I mean, he's thrown over 4,000 yards several times, and he's getting better. So Josh Allen, I think it's all about reps, and you take
Yeah.
a play like this, and I think this play we watched together live,
Yep.
and we called this play I think even before they hiked the ball. It was like, they're going to throw a little fade out to Benjamin, and he should probably have had this. It was a good play. I think that's Davis.
Yeah.
That's on him. He needed to maybe get himself a little better position, box him out a little bit, but, you got to give credit where credit's due there to Davis. But those are the type of plays I want to see. I want to see those shots taken, you
Yeah.
know, because that's what we were missing the last several years was, you know, those shots taken. Here's Peterman in the snowball last year, throwing the back shoulder fade out to Benjamin, and that was what you got to do. You got to take advantage of your mismatches. Because he's a mismatch on just about any corner and just about any defensive player out there, right?
Yeah.
So if you can get him in more positions to high point the ball, I think you're going to see his production go up dramatically. So, it's just reps. At this point, like we saw in practice the other day, they were throwing these back shoulders, they were throwing the high point fades, and you got to understand a player's skill set, right?
Yep.
Not all players are the same type of skill sets, so and you can't play them all the same. So I think that's one good thing about, I don't want to say one good thing, but I think that's one thing about McDermott and his staff that is encouraging, is that they see those things. They understand what a player's specific, there's a reason why a player got to the NFL, and it's and they zero in on those, and understand what their strengths are, and hopefully we can see more of this here in 2018.
No, I agree with you. McDermott and the front office altogether,
Yeah.
from top to bottom, they're very good at not just scouting players in the draft, but guys that are in the league, guys that are on their team, the self scouts. Those moments of self scouting your team. And I think that if you're out at camp for one day, I think you look at this offense and what they're doing with Benjamin and some of these other guys with Shady out there and lining him up wide. I
Yeah,
think you see that Dable understands that as well and how to get the best out of the players and put them in the best position. As I'd mentioned, putting Benjamin in the slot a lot and having him run a lot of those tight end routes because those are the routes he's good at. Those break in and out breaking routes from the slot in short area. Over the middle, those digs, and you see this. This is a dagger concept with him running that deep in route, and Peterman hits him perfectly in the window. So I
yeah,
mean, putting the players in the best position, I think that is that's the key. And maybe Josh Allen isn't the most accurate. Maybe he is like Cam Newton. That's all fine and dandy. Well, what does he do well? Maximize those the events or those opportunities for Allen, and put Benjamin in the best spot to help Allen or any of these quarterbacks for that matter when
mhm,
they do decide who the starter is. So I agree. I think that it was unnecessary. I don't think he needed to say anything at this point. And honestly, I'm sure the PR of the Bills or maybe even his agent alone was probably saying, "Hey, pump the brakes, man. You're in a contract year. You don't want to be throwing teammates under the bus. This is not going to help you. Just be quiet, keep your head down like you have been, and let your play speak for itself because he's making plays at camp. You're seeing it. He's getting touchdowns. He's getting these, like we said, 50-50 balls. So there's no need for this extracurricular activity or nonsense on social media. As someone who covers this team, but is also a fan of this team, I don't want him saying anything because it does create a distraction. I would rather keep, from a fan standpoint, from an analyst standpoint, and honestly, from a former coaching standpoint, I would want my player just keep your head down to keep playing. So,
yeah,
with that said, I do want to get to some of these questions here because there's some really good ones from our
mhm,
Slack channel. And we'll start with the offensive side of the ball, John.
sure,
So we're going to start with running backs because the guy that stood out was the former Texas A&M running back, Keith Ford, undrafted free agent that the team brought in. More of a power back, a guy that would probably fit when we're talking roles in a Daboll offense and the Patriot scheme type running backs. I think Ford is more that power back, more of that LeGarrette Blount type running back. So with what you've seen so far in red, what are your thoughts on Keith Ford so far in camp?
Well, I mean, he obviously is a power back, right? I think he has similar skill sets to Ivory, and to be honest with you, um, he's a guy that can get upfield. He's got power. He seems to find the holes. At least the few reps that I see him take live in camp, he looked good. I think he had a nice little touchdown run there last Saturday in camp, and
Hmm.
I think he's a guy that is he gonna crack? I think that's a position group, and even McDermott touched on this a few days ago in one of his pressers, saying that he's excited about the competition at the running back position.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, that was the run. I mean,
that's
and
just
I don't
nice.
this is a play
Oh, don't get
that
started on it.
I'm going there. That a play that's going to get called back though this year?
Yeah, with the
Because
helmet rule.
the
Yeah, the new
helmet
helmet
rule,
rule.
because that's the type of play that I live for football. Is a running back coming downhill, 1-on-1, who's that Dean Marlowe or someone like that, another big guy out in the safety position and just body on by,
Yeah,
best man win. And I'd hate to see that play get removed from football. Um,
he's
just
running
because
hard though,
he's
man.
running hard. Yeah, that was the
Woo!
play that I was referencing.
Bang!
He made a cut, and then he wasn't cutting again though. He was
No.
going through you there, and it's always good to have a guy like that because what that does is it amps your team up. The guys get fired up when they see a guy, you know, running hard like that and hustling and making plays. So it's good to see guys like this on your roster and like going back to my point earlier is it's a position group that man, I mean, we're 5-6 strong at that position,
Yeah,
and there is and what's good about it, and it's almost like a double-edged sword, is there's they're all different type of backs though, really.
yeah.
You got some speed guys, you got some wiggle guys, you got some power guys, and I don't know how many they're going to keep on the roster this year, but I think Keith Ford has a shot as long as he can do some things on special teams. I think we're going to need to see him in that role,
Yeah.
first before
That's
I.
where I think he's not cut out
Yeah,
for this team this
right,
year, because depending on how many they keep, 3 or 4 running backs, you're talking Ivory and Shady are pretty much a lock. Just I say Ivory is a lock just because of his contract,
sure,
and the way they were aggressive with him, and he's familiar to the running backs coach Kelly Skipper. So we talk about the third and fourth, running back. I mean, say they keep 3, I think Cadet's got that. I think if it's 3, it's Cadet versus Taiwan Jones, because Jones has stood out so far in camp too. He's had
yep,
some explosive plays, and he's a special teamer. He can return, and he's a gunner. So I think Cadet and Jones are vying for that third spot, and especially when you talk about the role that is typically in the Patriots or Dable scheme, it's usually more of a receiving back. A guy that can run some routes out wide. Out wide. So I think Ford has had a tremendous camp. I think what more than likely happens with him is they try to sneak him onto the practice squad. As
right,
Aaron Quinn had said in our Slack channel, I think that is as one avenue. Whether he clears that, we
right,
don't know, because guys like that are that big, that have the vision that he's shown so far in camp. Um, it's seen around the league. Guys around the league, scouts around the league, pro scouts are looking at everyone's roster and seeing who are guys that may not make the cut there, that we can add and upgrade certain positions on our team. So that's stuff that they do pay attention to. So I think Ford has had a great camp, and I hope he continues to do that. So what about the receiver position? And one guy that has had amazing rapport with our rookie quarterback Josh Allen is Virginia Tech wide receiver Cam Phillips. What's your thoughts on Phillips?
well, yeah, like, I mean, you hear almost something about him every day, right? Just about, and you know, that's another position that's very volatile, in my opinion. I mean, it's really, to my opinion, it's Benjamin, and then I guess you slide in Curly there,
Yep.
and then you fill in the blank from there. Because I'm not 100% sure Zay Jones even makes this team this
Oh,
year.
yeah.
I know that's there's people that will contest that statement, but what have you done for me lately? This is a what have you done for me lately league, and lately you've been hanging out on the sidelines. And guys like Cam Phillips, they're making plays. Guys like Robert Foster, they're making plays. Guys like Kalen Clay, they're making plays. So um, you gotta you gotta understand that we can't just hold roster spots because you're a second round pick. I mean, I get it. There's financial, you know, ramifications with releasing some of these guys. But if a guy can stay on the field, because what's the best of ability is availability, right? So if we can keep a guy and develop a guy like like your guy Phillips here. Then yeah, and he's got a rapport. He's catching, contested balls over the middle. He's got a rapport with your future quarterback that we hope plays, sooner than later. I'd hate, I'm not in a huge rush for him to start if he's not ready, Alan. But if he's ready, sure, put him in there. But there's got to be some sort of merit to, having a rapport with a guy and comfortability, because usually quarterbacks are comfortable with players that bail them out, right? That make a play for him. Because if he's making a play, he's making the quarterback look good, right? So, I mean, I could see him sneak. I mean, I definitely see him being the fifth or sixth guy on this team at this point, because no one else has really separated themselves. I don't know. You may disagree, but I think he's definitely at this point through camp. And again, I don't know everything about what happened in the spring as far as the OTAs and mini camps, but even going back to then, I've heard good things about him. So I think he has a role on our team.
All right, John, moving on to the offensive line. Let's talk about how they've looked so far, any worries that you have. And we have a question from our premium subscribers about Wyatt Teller and whether or not he's going to crack the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll start with Teller. From all indications, it looks like he's definitely, if he has a role on this team at all, at least this first year, it's definitely in a backup role. certainly like his physicality and his size and things, but looks like he's pretty raw from what I'm seeing and hearing.
Yeah.
Um, and it looks like there's some assignment issues still that he needs to work out. But I think maybe give him a year in the NFL system. I think that's a guy that will only get better. He'll put some more strength on, some more muscle,
Yeah.
hone his skill a little better. And when you're talking about the whole offensive line in general, everyone knows this. This is no secret. The key to offensive line, in my opinion, is continuity. And without that, I don't think you can have a great offensive line. And fortunately, I think for us, and a lot of people may disagree with this, is that there should be some still sort of continuity, although we lost 3 starters last year. But most of the guys that are filling these roles were in this were on this team last year, right?
Right.
Maybe with the exception of Bodine, and he's not a lock to start at least thus far. So, I'm not entirely worried about the team this year as far as the offensive line is concerned because I personally liked. I mean, no offense, to Eric Wood, he's a hell of a player. I think he's a great player. He was getting towards the tail end of his career,
Sure.
and I think Groy offers maybe a little bit more now. Maybe not quite the leadership and the knowledge that E. Wood had, but I think maybe athletically, because keep in mind Eric Wood. I mean, he had some devastating injuries over the course of his career, and your body can only go so far, back to its normal capabilities after some of those injuries. So, with Groy, he's a big guy. He can move quick. He's fast out of his stance.
Sure.
I'd like to see him, at least give him a shot at starting in this role. And then I like John Miller getting back into the starting role too, because I thought, I don't know what happened last year exactly, but from all indications this year, he's coming back. He's got his mind he's grinding. He's got his head on straight. Not that he did before, but he's locked in. They say he's in great shape, and he can get out and run too when it comes to the physicality aspect of the game.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on the whole Ryan Groy, Russell Bodine matchup or competition. According to reports, Groy had taken a couple days back to back at the starting position. It'll be interesting to see how that obviously unfolds. I do think Teller is a guy that is going to crack the 53. I don't think he's going to go to practice squad. I think he'll crack it. I do think I have to agree with you. He is raw. He's had some, busts and assignments, but I think he needs to start working on his hand usage and how he pairs that with his kick slide. It's something that I saw him struggle with at camp, but he had progressed over the few days that I was there. So I don't think he's going to start. I don't think he will be playing early in his career, but I think he's a guy that needs to develop a little more. I'm not too worried about his size or nastiness. I do worry about his feet. It's the pass blocking that they did at Va Tech wasn't the most complex system, and it was more of like a spread offense. So there was a lot less on his shoulders as far as pass blocking goes. So I do think that he needs to progress in the pass blocking side of things. Now, another guy that stood out real quick, we'll just touch upon him. I think Connor McDermott was and his improvement. That's something that was brought up in the Slack channel. I did like what I saw from Connor McDermott. He's a guy that I studied a lot in college coming out. And obviously last year, once they picked him up off from the Patriots, I thought that at that time, he had some skills that Juan Castillo and this offense could use. I just thought he needed to bulk up and get in the weight room a whole season, which he obviously did, and it's showing because he looks a lot more composed in his kick slide, and he's able to anchor better this year from what I've seen at camp so far. So I'm not surprised to hear that he's looked pretty good.
Yeah, that's a guy I think that is maybe a future, right tackle maybe.
Yeah.
I know, or I mean, he's got the athleticism, right, to play left tackle. Um, and he might be one of those swing tackles maybe. This year if he keeps up the good work with what he's been doing, and by all accounts, obviously Deion Dawkins has been out there smashing heads, and even Jordan Mills for that.
He's
I've
played pretty
heard,
good.
yeah, I've heard some good things with him as well. This camp as well, including some leadership stuff too. So,
Yeah.
that's important. And but obviously play is the utmost important thing, especially if you're a starter. And the offensive line, it looks pretty good. I mean, obviously there's been our D lines, gotten the best of them on some occasions, but
And
like
they
you
should.
saw, yeah, right. And you showed some plays though here where we were getting to the second levels on some of these runs and things, and albeit it might not be against our starters and such, but you know, uh, it helps having Shady back there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he could cover a lot of holes in your offensive line. And so we'll see how good Eric Wood and Richie Incognito really were this year, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, once we'll see what kind of stats Shady picks up. For me personally, I say this every year, could be a MVP type season for him. Um, just because I see him more in the passing game. I see him more getting that Marshall Falk type of workload. Maybe not super heavy, but I think he's going to get his touches in the passing game, like he did last year. And I think that's going to, and for by all accounts at camp, they have him lining up wide, lining up in the slot, lining up, in the backfield and split off towards the, in the H-back roll, things like that, just to get different mismatches, which I think is brilliant because he's going to, he's a mismatch no matter who you put him against, right?
Or where you put him,
Or
honestly.
where you put him.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
last year he had 79 targets in the receiving game, but if you look at those, you're wowed away. You're blown away by it, right? At 492
Right.
yards, 2 touchdowns. But if you actually break it down and look at the context or quality of those touches in the receiving game, they weren't really that good. Dennison didn't
Right.
scheme him up that well, and when you look at camp so far, and you guys are going to see it in preseason how they're using him and how Dable is creating explosive plays for him and getting him the ball out there. You're going to see the difference. It's night and day, and so I think that's what Dable has to manage this year. Not just getting missed touches, but they got to be quality touches because he honestly touched the
Right.
ball a little too much last year, and I think that this year he needs to scale it back a little, which is why I think they went out and got the Chris Ivory, a guy that can handle 10 to 12 to 15 carries, take a little off Shady, but give Shady the quality touches that he needs where he can create an explosive play in the long run. So with that said, let's move to the defensive side, John. Let's go look at another rookie that was brought up in the Slack channel, and that's Harrison Phillips. So far in camp, he's looked really good. One thing I had mentioned about Phillips, because it's a guy that you and I saw firsthand down in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. And down there, he was his typical run stuffing type, shade nose tackle
Mm-hmm.
down there. And he actually struggled as a pass rusher down at Mobile and in college for that matter. I mean, he did have a decent amount of pressures, I believe, coming out of Stanford, but he's not known for his explosiveness or burst off the ball as a pass rusher. But I'll tell you what, man, when I saw him at camp, he looks trim, he looks leaner, he looks quicker, and it appears to be showing all throughout the practices in the last few days. And so I want to hear your thoughts on Phillips, not only the nose tackle, but maybe getting some reps at 3-tech behind
Yeah.
Kyle Williams, and what percentage of snaps do you think he's going to play this season?
Well, I mean, he'll probably get a fair share. I mean, he'll be in that rotation. He'll probably be that second wave. It'll probably see a fair share of snaps. The great thing about him is that he's got some length to him. And he's starting to understand how to use that length at the pro level. It looks like so far in camp, because sometimes he can get up. He can get a little high and get
Mm-hmm.
moved around a little bit, but seems that he's been using that length and taking up a little bit more space, which is good. And is he better at the 1 or the 3? Well, that's to be seen. but I think he's got to roll in both spots, and
Right.
you said he does look lean. He does look in shape. Um, and I think he's got the right mindset to only get better. People want to compare him to Kyle Williams and things like that. And I think he even mentioned it. The only thing that why people mention that is because they look alike, right? But
Yeah, and their character, their DNA.
right,
I think he's going to get a lion's share of his reps at nose. I think that's
yeah,
I think that's evident. I think he's going to be the backup to Star Latulele, because of course Star has a lot of mileage on his legs. I know they paid him a lot, but when they need to give him a break, I think Harrison's going to be that number one guy. Now they will be able to rotate him to 3-tech, and I think that comes with the territory when you look at this defense, because if you look at last year, depending on whether they're trying to run an over front or an under front or trying to protect the will or the Mike, depending on who, the front that they're trying to run, basically, they're going to use those guys in different spots. So we did see Kyle Williams at shade nose tackle last year. There are times where you're going to see that just because they offer that versatility within the scheme. So I think Phillips should be getting some reps at 3, but I think a lion's share is going to come at nose tackle. And if you look at some of these numbers here, I mean, look at, the defensive lineman. Look at Adolphus Washington. He got 500 snaps last year. Look at Cedric Thornton. He got nearly 400. He had 387 snaps last year. DeAndre Coleman got 129. Worthy had 115. So they obviously, and everyone knows, they like to rotate this defensive front. They like to rotating guys along that D line. And I think Harrison brings that value, and which is why he was, drafted in the 3rd round. He's a guy that can be moved around. I agree his pad level does need to improve, because in college you could win that way because he's being a former wrestler, he knows how to use his leverage. He knows how to use his hands. But at the NFL level, you're going to have some of the best interior offensive linemen going against you, guys that also are athletes, guys that are also former wrestlers. So it's mano a mano. So I think he does need to work on his pad level a little bit. And if you watch him when he's in his stance, it's night and day compared to college. I think that you're seeing that coaching take shape with Harrison Phillips. So I do think that he'll have maybe 25% of the snaps.
yeah, I'll see around 30%. Yeah,
30, yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
the beauty of him this year with us is that he doesn't have to do everything like he did in Stanford.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have to play up and down the line like he was. Jesus, he had over 100 tackles at defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle, yeah.
That's unheard of, in my opinion. And so, we're not going to have to ask for that from him, and if he can do his role and make his plays along the line of scrimmage when he's asked at his 25-30% snaps, that's gold. So, those extra hustle plays, if we can just, kind of centralize that and consolidate that into the 20 to 30% snaps that he'll probably see, you're going to see a productive player, and I think that's what we got to keep our minds on. It's this, I don't need you to make 100 tackles.
We don't need you to be Kyle Williams. Be you, right?
Yeah, be you.
Play a role.
Play a role, and you'll see in the stats and the accolades and things like that will come. So yeah, but by all accounts, he looks great. He looks in shape. He looks like he's starting to come together as far as being a pro. And the thing I wanted to mention about him is that, he signed every autograph.
Yeah.
Every kid's autograph out there. I went there with another buddy of mine and his son, and he signed every single kid's autograph that was out there, and a lot of guys, they don't, but he did, and that shows. So I think to me that shows a little something about someone's character. They'll stick around an extra half hour, an hour after practice, just signing autographs, and take it for what it is. But it's the kind of guy you're getting, and like we said at the beginning of the show here, guys with high character, and you can't have enough of those guys on your team.
No doubt about it, man. And one final question from the Slack channel in regards to who Tyler asks, who's a player you're not a big fan of that you think will make the roster anyway? Do you have a guy that maybe whose game you don't really like? Maybe you don't see how he fits into the scheme. And is there anyone that comes to mind for you, John?
That I think will make it that I don't like.
Yeah.
Nah, let me.
I'll go first, and I'll let you gather your
Sure.
thought. I mean, I think the guys know me so well because Aaron immediately said probably Philip Gaines. I just don't see where he
Yeah.
fits. I don't. Again, my theory is that the Bills want to play a little more man. This guy can run with anyone. He's got a lot of experience in man coverage schemes, playing at Kansas City last year. But I
Mhm.
just don't see how he fits quite yet. Of course, I'm always in that mode of, well, when it comes to secondary, when it comes to defense altogether, I'll trust the process, as they say. But I think that Gaines, I still have a question mark with him. He's a guy that I thought I wanted to keep an eye on at camp. He's a guy that I mentioned in my athletic article that I don't really know how he fits or how they're going to scheme him up because that's a position that a lot of people just think that the slot corner is just the third best corner, but a lot of
Mhm.
times it's usually your most athletic corner. It's usually
Sure.
one of your smartest corners, and guy that is usually the most physically gifted because he has to deal with all sorts of types of guys in that slot. So especially in today's NFL, well, you can see a big guy like Benjamin in a slot one play, and then see Edelman in the slot the next. So and I think it's incredibly important to the communication of the secondary, that slot corner position. So I'm worried about that slot corner position, as I had mentioned on the last podcast. But I think Gaines, yeah, that one's a little too easy. That's a low-hanging fruit, Tyler. I mean, you really set me up with a spike on that one. So, John, anyone come to mind for you?
Well, I mean, there's two guys that I think. I don't know. There's two guys really. One is Shaq Lawson.
Ooh, good one.
And I think for him, you're a first round pick, highly touted. You know, gotta get production from you, right? I mean, that's a guy that I think, and I'm not sure if he is a lock to make the team or not. I don't know, but I need more. I need more explosion from him. I need to see a guy that. I think he has a role, but I think at what you're paying, I mean, you're not paying him tons because obviously the rookie scale went down a bit, but you're still paying him first round money, and you expect more from a player like that. So I think he's a guy that I would like. I want to see, turn it up, make
Yeah.
the roster, be a 10+ sack guy, you know, and make a difference on this defense because we need all the pass rushing help we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean Trent Murphy, nothing's is set in stone with him as far as him being, a world beater yet. Jerry, he's been up and down throughout his career as far as pass rushing. I mean, at least statistically, speaking.
Yeah.
And then obviously Yarbrough is a young guy that I think may have a big year this year, but we need Shaq to do what he's supposed to do, and that's be a difference maker. And the second guy, and I've touched on him a few times, is Zay Jones. For me, it's hard to keep a guy like that on the roster that doesn't practice. That had a horrific rookie year, albeit, and then obviously coupled with some of the off-season events that took place. I mean, it's unfortunate if he doesn't make the roster because, I was excited for his career, because obviously he had a prolific college career. But it's hard for a guy like that, in my opinion, to make a team that A, is not available, and then B, once he was out there, I mean, if you couple the playoff game with the Carolina game and a few others, I mean, those are tough games to lose, and he had an opportunity to be the hero there, and it just didn't happen. And again, he was a rookie, so I don't want to, pile on him, but he needs to get back out there, and he needs to show what he's capable of doing, and that's being a 100-catch guy and a reliable target. So, those two guys come to mind as far as guys that, could or couldn't make the team that maybe have a little bit of notoriety. And the thing is, the wide receiver position is wide open, right? So, I mean, every day he misses is the one less day that he's losing out on. And by all accounts, I may have missed this, but I haven't heard much as far as when his return is slated. And you may be able to touch on that a little better, but I'd like to see him get back out there sooner than later. And if I don't see anything from him throughout the preseason, I mean, maybe you stash him on IR for the year or something like that. But we're we're gonna need something from him soon because we invested a pretty high pick for him.
But John, we go back and forth all the time about this. I think you're jumping the gun a little bit. I do think that he's had a rough first year and a half. He has, and when you include this offseason. But I think that much like the quarterback competition, if you tout as coaches, as an organization, you tout competition. I think you're right. I think you're right when it's, he shouldn't just be thrown in there and given the job back. I do think that's fair. But I think they also preach family. I think they also preach their guys and take care of their guys. And I think Zay Jones is one of their guys, obviously. And I think that when you look at a lot of the advanced stats and a lot of you see on social media, guys just ripping Zay Jones for his drops and his issues. I mean, I think they were overblown, honestly, man. I do. I really think that it was a little too much from the peanut gallery. I think he does need to tighten the ship a little bit, start focusing on football a little more, a little better. But I think that it is a little overblown, his initial season, especially when you break down each pass that was thrown his way. I think that it was just I think it was overblown a little bit. But that's just my 2 cents on that. And I think Shaq Lawson's a similar guy. I would have to agree with Shaq. I think I mentioned it on the video I showed just a few minutes ago. I did a film room breakdown on Trent Murphy, Eddie Yarbrough, and Shaq Lawson. And I think Eddie Yarbrough brings the exact same roles and traits and skills that Shaq Lawson does, but he does it with a little more tenacity, a little more, with a chip on his shoulder. I think he can stop the run in the same way that Shaq can, and I think he offers a little better pass rush variety. He knows how to use his hands and win, not with the speed, because those are two guys that don't win with speed, don't win with the speed rushes, and they have to be able to win one-on-ones. And I think Shaq has not perfected his pass rush skills yet. So, and I think Murphy has. And if you're interested in seeing that breakdown, get to the website. Our premium members obviously have access to that. It's a good 20 or 30-minute breakdown on those three guys. So with that said, I want to wrap it up, man.
Definitely.
Obviously, it's been a good podcast. We covered a lot of topics, from the Hall of Fame to Kelvin Benjamin to some guys that some of our subscribers wanted to hear about, our 2 cents on some of these younger guys that the Bills brought in this offseason. So with that said, we appreciate you tuning in. Get to cover1.net. To take in all of the content we provide, not just for the Bills, not with just film room sessions, X's and O's, but we got your commentary, we got your video cast, we got your podcast, we got some coverage from Alan and Nick on the Cowboys and Giants. We have a little bit of everything there, so get to the website and, of course, download the app for Android and iOS. You can find all of our content, obviously, through the app, and make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, our social media, everywhere. We're everywhere. So if you want your Bills takes, if you want your rational Bills takes, I should say, if you want takes that are, down to earth, and we'll give you a little more in-depth talk about, obviously, come to Cover One. And if you're listening to this, obviously, you do that. So we appreciate it. Keep spreading the word, and thanks for tuning in.